Welcome to the second half of my Draping 101 tutorial. To recap, in part 1 I showed you how to drape your muslin fabric over your dress form and mark key points. In this episode, I'll be showing you how to transfer those markings onto dotted paper, otherwise known as truing, and then cutting your pattern out of manila paper. To start, you'll need the following supplies: tracing wheel, pattern notcher, owl, dotted paper, manila paper, French curve, hip curve ruler, L ruler, clear ruler, stapler, stapler remover, pattern weights or pins. Optional supplies: rabbit hole punch, pattern hooks, pattern cards, pattern shears. I'll have a link on my website so you guys can buy these supplies online. Continuing with our truing, preparing the dotted paper the same way we prepare the muslin fabric in part 1. For the front bodice, mark the center front and bust level line. For the back bodice, mark the center back and shoulder blade level. Now remove the muslin from the dress form and lay it flat on the table. I'm going to start with the front bodice, matching up the center front and bust level line from the fabric to the paper. You can either pin the fabric and paper together, which is how we did it at school, but I like to use pattern weights. If you use pattern weights, you have to be extra careful not to move the fabric around. Transfer all the markings with the tracing wheel. Then remove the fabric and with the pencil remark the markings. Now with an L or clear ruler, make a 90-degree mark at center front neck, 1/4 of an inch long, and at center front waist, 1/2 an inch long. Now connect both waist dart markings to the apex. Do the same to the shoulder dart. Then measure 1 inch away from apex. Center the markings between two lines meeting at apex. Now connect this point to the waist dart marking. Place a French curve with the curly side down until you match up the center front neck at the 90-degree point and the neck shoulder. Drawing the shoulder seam. Close shoulder dart with dart axis folded towards center front. Draw a straight line with your clear ruler from neck shoulder to shoulder ridge. Drawing the waist curve, close up the waist dart and draw a curved line with your hip curve ruler, matching up the following points: center front waist at the 90-degree point, waist dart, and waist side seam. Finishing up the side seam. Draw a line from waist to side seam underarm, then measure 1 inch down and 1/2 an inch out for ease. Draw in the armhole with the French curve. Make sure the curl is away from the center and connect the following points: side seam armhole, armhole pinch, and shoulder ridge. Just like we did for the front bodice, you'll want to mark up the center back and shoulder blade level and either pin or use pattern weights. Now with an L or clear ruler, make a 90-degree mark at center back neck, 1 inch long, and center back waist, 1 inch long. Drawing the back, waist, and shoulder dart. Start by drawing the waist dart. Find the center of the dart and draw a line parallel to center back that's 7 inches long. Connect that point to the two markings at waist. This will be your back waist dart. Now from the 7-inch mark, draw a straight line to the shoulder dart marking closest to the neck and shoulder. From the shoulder dart marking, measure down 3 inches and connect that point to the shoulder dart marking. This will be your shoulder dart. Place the French curve with the curly side to the right of you and move it until you match up the following points: center front neck at the 90-degree point and the neck shoulder. Drawing the shoulder seam, close up the shoulder dart and draw a straight line from neck shoulder to shoulder ridge. Drawing the waist curve, close up the waist dart and draw a curved line with your hip curve ruler, matching up the following points: center back waist at the 90-degree point, waist dart, and waist side seam. Finishing up the side seam, draw a straight line with your clear ruler from waist to side seam underarm, then measure down 1 inch and out 1/2 an inch for ease. Drawing in the armhole. This is done in two parts. First, match up the shoulder blade and the new underarm side seam. Then finish by connecting the shoulder blade level and shoulder ridge. Balancing the armhole. Measure the front and back armhole. The front armhole should measure ½ inch shorter than the back armhole. Correcting front and back armhole by removing ¼ inch at middle of the armhole, shaping back to its original corners at the top and bottom. To make the front and back armhole shorter, add ¼ inch at the middle armhole area and again reshape it to its original corners at the top and bottom. If the armhole doesn't balance by removing ¼ inch, an error was made on the dress form or when transferring your markings. I'm going to add ½ inch seam allowance all the way around except for at the neckline. I'll be adding ¼ inch just because I want to check my work, but since this will be a block, I will eventually be cutting the seam allowance out when I cut it out of manila paper. Cutting the block out of manila paper, fold the manila paper in half using the handle of your shears and go over the fold to give it a nice clean edge. Place the center front of the front bodice on the fold. Then staple from center front neck to waist. Finish by stapling as much as you can at the shoulder and waist. You don't need a whole lot of staples. Remember, you will be taking them out later. Then do the same to the back bodice. It doesn't go on the fold, but we need 2 pieces, and again staple as much as you can. Now it's time to cut the block. A tip when using shears to cut manila paper, angle the shears away from the pattern piece. Don't go overboard while tilting, just a slight tilt should do the trick. Once you have both pieces cut out, it's time to notch. You'll need to notch the center front neck and waist, center back neck and waist, shoulder and waist dart, and armhole. For the front and back armhole, you'll want to measure and mark 3 inches away from the side seam. Note that the back armhole gets 2 notches, so measure out ½ inch from the 3-inch point and mark. Finishing with the marking. We need to mark ½ inch away from the dart point for the location of the punch and circle symbol. This is a standard rule for pattern making. It's a guide that alerts a seamstress to sew ½ inch beyond the mark to the dart point. Although the owl doesn't leave a hole, in production the fabric is actually punched, leaving a hole. So if we were to punch the dart point, we would be left with a hole, or the sewer might sew up the dart incorrectly. Now that we have everything notched and punched, we can remove the staples and label the pattern. Note the way that I'm opening them so that they are mirrored. Marking the pattern. I will go more into detail about marking your patterns later, but for right now, you'll just need to mark the center front or center back, the grain line, pattern piece name, size, and cut. Circle the cut number. The number on the cut should match the number of pieces we need to cut out of fabric. This number also reflects the number of pattern pieces. For example, the back bodice is not placed on the fold, but we still need 2 pieces, the right and left back bodice. So we mark the cut 2. If you're confused, don't worry. For now, mark the cut number for the back bodice 2 and the front bodice 1. And don't forget to circle the dart punch. Like I said before, I'll go over in greater detail about marking your patterns on another episode. For those of you who are interested in becoming fashion designers, you now know the work that is involved in creating patterns. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and YouTube for the latest updates.